Hello and welcome to Attacking Third. We are live on YouTube with the United States Women's National Team recap. We got to talk about a 2-0 victory over Wales for the United States before they head off to the World Cup. So make sure you're subscribed to us, like this video, and drop us your thoughts on all things U.S. Women's National Team in the chat. You know we want to hear from you, so let's go. Hey everyone, and welcome into Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Carlin, analyst and broadcaster for CBS Sports. On today's show, we are going to recap the 2-0 victory against Wales, and we're going to touch on NWSL because that's happening right now as we are live, of course. So a quick reminder before we take a deep dive into everything, make sure you download, follow, and subscribe to us so that you never miss out on a single episode because the World Cup literally starts next week. Attacking Third, of course, is your location for all of your U.S. Women's National Team and World Cup news, analysis, and more. We've arrived, Lisa. That's what it feels like. How you doing tonight?
Oh, it's so exciting. Finally, I honestly woke up this morning and I was like, yay, it's a US send-off day. Like they finally get to play against Wales. We get to get a glimpse of this 23 players that Vlatko has called into the World Cup. We get to see who's going to play, see how much we get to see from Vlatko in the US. Little sneak peek, not much. I mean, like in terms of how close he held his cards to his chest, very close to his chest. We're going to talk about it, dive all in, but I cannot believe it's finally here. And Attacking Third will be covering it throughout the entirety, through the final, August 20th. Be sure that you have downloaded us as a podcast, right? Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to us. For everyone that joins us on YouTube, hit us up on podcast too, because we'll be there. Maybe a little bit more than we'll be on YouTube as of right now. So follow us as a podcast because we'll have everything for you there. But I am excited to chat with you about it, Sandra.
I think we mentioned this a little bit on our preview. Love to bring a little bit of the preview onto the recap. But in our previewing, we talked about that. How the buildup, the window from the Tokyo Olympics till now has sort of gone by in a blink. It just feels like we were talking about that bronze medal finish, that we've, seen massive players rotated into camps, and now we got the 23 player roster. And right when they were playing that Ireland series in April, they dropped the news, hey, this is when the send-off match is going to be. It's going to be on July 9th in San Jose against Wales. And we were counting down the days even more from then. So to finally have this game and get to sort of talk about it and analyze it a little bit, because let's be honest, there's some things to talk about still as we're going into this World Cup. But it's a win. And maybe, just maybe, despite the tale of two halves there, that's a good way to head off, I think, into your World Cup group stage. The United States facing Wales in San Jose, California. Shout out to the sellout here, 18,000 to send off the United States on their World Cup journey. Scenes. Good vibes going into this one.
Massive. I mean, this was a game that when we had previewed, we kind of talked about who we were going to see, what we could expect from this Welsh side as well. When you look at Wales, they're ranked 30th in the FIFA ranking. This was their first time playing outside of Europe. They are not going to a World Cup, but this Welsh side had a devastating loss, right, in the qualifiers for the World Cup against Switzerland. They're a very talented team. We also talked a little bit about Jess Fishlock, and it's an NWSL international crossover weekend. And I was wrong. I was like, Jess Fishlock's not going to play for OL Reign. She was. I'm like a little bit confused about the logistics of it, because to go from Seattle, Washington to Orlando, Florida, and then somehow get to San Jose, California must have been a heck of a travel for Jess Fishlock. She ends up with a little bit of a knock during the OL Reign game. So she does not feature for Wales today. She was not available off the bench. We didn't get to see her. But it was for Gemma Granger, the manager. She had some good lineups. I think the game plan for this Wales side was pretty impressive to see the way they rolled out. You could tell that they were going to play in a low to mid block against the United States and force everything wide. It was really tight, really compact down the spine for this Welsh side. And the lanes and the flanks for the United States were wide open. And they didn't really utilize that, in my opinion, until the end of the first half and then into the second half. But it was so narrow in the front line for the U.S. But let's get into it. Starting lineups, everything that happened. I mean, that's kind of like my take on Wales, though, at this point. Like, they came out and defensively had a game plan that looked pretty good. And I think they grew with confidence throughout the game because the goals for the United States did not come until the 76th minute, right? Until the final 15 minutes.
I like that you're actually starting with that a little bit, because that's the energy. I think that's sort of the immediate reaction and takeaway out of this game. Of course, maybe with the starting lineups too, that's where you sort of get those preliminary kind of reactions, whether it was for Wales or the United States, really, because I mean, you touching on Jess Fishlock and the fact that they dropped their starting 11 and you don't see, the all-time capped player for Wales on the men or women's side of the game, leading goal scorer for this team, not available or unable at this point to go ahead and really take part of. Look, it's a historic match, I think, in their national team program. We talked about that a bit on the preview as well. Folks maybe get fixated on a number. Oh, they're a 30 ranked team, but they're a top 10 ranked team within UEFA, in terms of all across European competitions. And getting the opportunity to play outside of Europe, massive opportunity, right, for this program, and to not have your most iconic player, essentially, for lack of a better word or phrasing, it's kind of a bummer. It sucked to have to see, but it was nice to see that she was in good spirits, tweeting about the game, and excited to be there and willing the team on, and it. Within that, though, you take a look and see, okay, who are going to be some players inside of this starting 11 for Wales who were going to maybe cause some problems for this national team, because I think that's the other thing we're looking for in this one. It's a send-off game, and in the preview we were curious about some of the level of play. Is it going to get chippy or physical at times? Is there sort of a friendly agreement between the two sides to just sort of go out and have a good run out there? We heard from Andonovski that the number one priority was just to exit this match healthy, and then the result would be kind of secondary. So I think, kind of looking at the Wales lineup, obviously not seeing Fishlock, that's a pretty big name that's missing. But we talked a little bit about Angren James as well in the preview as the player to maybe look out for here in this game. And while I agree that gave some problems in the midfield at times, Rana Roberts in this game for Wales really covering a ton of ground there. Talk about having to have some defensive responsibility going up against Thompson or Smith whenever they switched, and at times having to deal with Crystal Dunn. But maybe that type of individual performance is something that motivates a team, because on the other side, for the United States starting 11, there were, I think, maybe some surprises here, because on the preview, we talked about wanting to see or get a glimpse at what we think would be the ideal starting 11 for this United States women's national team. And I don't know if this is actually it, Lisa.
Yeah, this is not what I predicted, for sure. I mean, you can fact check me on our preview episode. I thought we would see what we would see heading into the World Cup. I thought that we would maybe get a glimpse of the starting 11 that we'll see come 2 Fridays from now. However, maybe this is it, right? I mean, I can't predict the future, but I just don't think this was it. And that's what I alluded to at the beginning when saying Vlatko Andonovski, head coach for the U.S., kept his cards close to his chest in terms of what the starting lineup is going to look like and how that's going to roll out. But in terms of like the back line, when you look at what Vlatko Andonovski did roll out with Alyssa Nair in goal, you and I talked about that. What would happen? Would he split time? But nope, she got a full 90 minutes. Looks like she will be the number one goalkeeper, as she has been for the last several years, heading into this World Cup series. And the back four, Dunn, Girma, Cook, and Fox. That's what I predicted. But fascinating that this was the first time the back four has ever played together, those 4 players. And to me, that was a shocking fact. I mean, I'm sure if I thought about it, I would have realized that. But the fact that it's usually been a Sauerbrunn in there or a Huerta and then a rotation happening. But fascinating to see that. I think that overall they did a really good job, and we got to see how the difference is going to be between a Dunn and a Fox on the outside, because Crystal Dunn will utilize the flank space. That's what she did in this Wales game. She really attacked. She was able to move forward, whereas Fox likes to cut inside. She likes to get the ball at her feet and cut inside and kind of dictate play centrally a little bit more, which is just something that Gurman and Cook have to get used to if that's the way they're going to play. And when Fox was doing that, the midfielder would pop out. But that's the back four and then the back five that they started with, that I thought was going to happen. But then it gets a little tricky moving forward.
Yeah.
The front six, it was Sullivan, Herrera, and Ashley Sanchez in the midfield for Vlatko Ananovsky. This surprised me. I mean, I really thought we were going to see Rose Lavelle, and we didn't get to see her at all throughout this game. I understand not wanting players to get injured, wanting to keep them healthy and run into it. But I just think to go from not playing a single minute in a game from April to the World Cup is a really long stretch from Rose Lavelle, considering they said she was cleared in this game against Wales.
Yeah, that came up a couple times, right? I think on the broadcast, so no matter where you are watching, it sort of mentioned, oh, she's medically cleared, and hey, that's great. That's a box that's checked off, right? But I think the other box that folks are looking to get checked off are the actual physical minutes. So, when is that going to come? And now I think it's pretty clear that it's not going to come until actual World Cup play. But I'm with you though. I think in terms of looking at this starting 11, there's three, maybe even four players that I didn't anticipate in terms of being what's considered the ideal starting 11 going into a World Cup. Thrilled to see the first ever start for Thompson with this team. That's great. As the youngest player on this team. Sanchez obviously getting into the mix in light of Rose Lavelle not having the minutes today. And even with Morgan and Smith, like how is that going to look moving forward up top with Thompson? Is it going to be Williams? Is it going to be Rodman? And even honestly, even Emily Fox, I think with kind of the versatility within the back line with Sonnet, with Huerta, with those two defenders also going into this final 23 player roster of this World Cup, who is going to be that extra outside back? So not seeing Ertz in this one, I was a little curious about as well. I think that's a player that you look at and say maybe that is someone who you slot in, kind of put that label of ideal starter in terms of Andonovsky's tactics moving forward. And the fact that we had heard, in the build up to this game, that they would utilize this as preparation. And perhaps now that it's done and dusted, we know that the preparation in this was to maybe see adjustments, because we saw a lot of rotation in this game. Sure.
There was a lot of rotation in the front line, as you mentioned, Thompson, Morgan, Smith. I don't think that's going to be the starting lineup at the World Cup. I think to get Thompson a start was crucial, kind of see what she said, see what she could do from the jump and kind of impress, maybe get some of the nerves out a little bit. And with Alyssa Thompson getting the start in the front line, I think that there was at some point, Vlatko Ananovsky in media or in an interview had said that it's pretty much a like for like swap in terms of Swanson, right? That was the immediate call up. As soon as Swanson went down in April against Ireland, Thompson was already on a plane at halftime of that match. Now, I personally don't think that Thompson is like an actual like for like swap for Swanson, just in terms of experience and what happens there. But that's kind of what he alluded to, saying that like, yeah, she can slot into that starting lineup wherever Swanson would have been now as Thompson. And yes, they have similar styles of play and they've got good instincts and they have similar skill sets that they can bring to the field. But that's something that I wouldn't expect to see moving forward. Honestly, I think Williams should be in there, but I'm not so sure that's going to happen. But yeah, you talked about rotation for this team. The subs didn't come until the half, but that's typical. We did get one sub at the half, Trinity Rodman in for Alex Morgan up front. There's a little bit of muscle soreness reported for Alex Morgan before the game. So to give her 45 minutes and to run is promising. And then to see Rodman slot in, great. But interesting that she played the 9 and Smith still stayed out wide.
I think it's important that you note that, because we're talking about like ideal starting 11s here, like who are going to be the 11 that they preference, you have a preference for over maybe, some other players navigating this group stage. They haven't had a camp or games together since April. That's something else that we talked about a bit in the preview. And we're just sort of fact checking ourselves a little bit about things that we previewed in this game ahead of the recap, and I'll put myself on there as well. I had in my written preview on .com that this game was going to end 2-0, and that not only was it going to end 2-0, but the goals were not going to happen in this game until the second half.
Yep.
And guess what happened? They all came in the second half.
Got it right, baby.
So I'm just kind of like, there's a number of things here you mentioned it already. That entire back line playing together for the first time in a competitive match, going to a World Cup. We see Sanchez, essentially in place of Lavelle, Horan and Sullivan, familiar, with each other. Thompson getting a first start alongside Morgan, Smith. We saw some switching along that top line as well, and maybe that's where we kind of narrow things here in this first segment of this episode. This first half, we saw this team try to start off on the front foot. We saw them try to get a little patient at times, maybe in spite of themselves. Look, they were getting into dangerous areas. Let's not act like they weren't. They had the majority of the possession. They were on the ball far more than Wales were. But there just wasn't that final pass. There just wasn't that kind of, kind of clinical fire that we kind of see, the little bit of ruthlessness I think that you look for sometimes as this machine of the United States women's national team. And even though there was good movement and we saw the rotations and the switching of sides at point, you could just still sort of see maybe this kind of like, I don't want to say like timidness, but it took them a little bit of time to kind of unlock that. But I think a part of it is it's all a combination of all the sum of its parts that we keep talking about, kind of over and over, kind of just like the lack of time together, the first timers on the back line together. I mean, we did see at one point, even in this first half, that there was a little bit of a scary moment in which that defensive shape tried to play out of the back. Yeah. And we saw a little bit of a counter press from Wales, but Alyssa Nair was there to sort of snuff out the danger.
Yeah, I think it's important that they did play out of pressure, right? Because in the World Cup, they're going to see a high press, whether it's at the very start of the game or maybe at the start of the half or throughout the entirety. They're going to see that. And this back four needs to be able to break it. So I like that they tried that and they didn't just say, hey, let's play a little bit more route one when Wales gives that counter press. But I think throughout the first 45 minutes of this game for the United States, there was definitely some, I'm going to say like, kinks to shake out for this team in the best way possible.
Dust off the cobwebs sometimes.
Exactly. Dust off the cobwebs, shake off some of the nerves. It was a sold out stadium in California. A lot of players playing in front of their families and hometowns, being local. And I think even
lots of sun.
Lots of sun. The players with like towels over their head. Hilarious. Can we get them some baseball hats or like something? Bucket hats? I don't know. But even like Alyssa Thompson to start the game, there was moments where it was like her legs were moving too fast. She ends up tripping over herself. I think the first ball she gets and going in line, trying to cross it in. It was like very tiny things that they just needed to shake off. And that's why you have a send-off game. Even the decision making, I think, throughout the first half was at times questionable for me, more so in the final third and the final moment to get a goal, because they do so much hard work in the buildup, working the ball around, the off-ball movement, passing it, switching the ball from side to side. But then the final pass, the final shot, the final cross was off, whether the shot sailed over the crossbar or the cross was to no one and pretty much mishit and sent out of bounds, or the cross wasn't to someone. Like, this is at a level where the players that are getting line need to take a peek inside the box and see, okay, where are my runners? You should have one front post, should have one back post, and you should have one around the penalty spot, maybe one also at the top of the box, just like as a general guideline. And if your crosses aren't going to those spots when runners are open, to me, that's something that's like, okay, you need to fix that. And as the game progressed, we did see that get fixed. We did see them make a more influential decisions in the final end of the field in the attacking third.
I think I think that's the other side of the coin, right? And we'll definitely talk about it after the break in terms of giving the second half and the substitutes their due, dap and props and all of that. But for to close out this first half, it's an important point that you bring up about the set pieces, because I was like, somebody water these crops for set piece services. We saw some questionable stuff from the corner flags. They ended up closing out this half with like 8 corners, and I would argue that half of them were not great service into the box.
You could tell they're missing Swanson.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. She took all the corners for them. And now to have a slew of players taking them, right? We saw Sophia Smith take them, Ashley Sanchez from the right side, Savannah DeMello took them when she came in. I mean, any player is capable at this level of taking them, but they have to be better. They have to be more clinical. And you're exactly right. As the game progressed, the set pieces got better. The crosses from the wide areas got a lot better, and they were finding targets, not just blindly crossing or sending them in. And like, this is also, it was good defense by Wales, right? Like, they did a really good job of marking up, marking space, getting to the first and second balls, making it difficult for the U.S. to win them. But it's only going to get harder for the United States as they progress throughout this summer in the World Cup.
I will say there was a part of this first half, and like I said, I mentioned, I even wrote it in the prediction part of the preview, where I was like, you know what? There's enough here, though. There's enough A time and B players to maybe make some adjustments and turn some things around. And essentially, we did see that happen in the second half. So make sure you stick with us, because we're going to break down the second half for you after a quick break.
And how about this? Get ready for non-stop action that will have you saying, "You gotta be kidding!" Oh my, Canada! This could change things. What a play and what a finish! That's some pretty good football, eh? He's gone all the way to the house. It's the Canadian Football League, Thursday on CBS Sports Network.
All right, the second half of this game provided the highlights. It provided the goals. It provided some different looks, because I'll say at the scoreless half, if you're Wales, you got to be feeling great about how you just held the number 1 ranked team, the reigning World Cup champions, to a scoreless draw at the half. And if the United States, maybe you're like, hey, what are we talking about in the locker room? Something that we got introduced to officially after the recent announcement of the co-captaincy of this team. It's Lindsey Horan, Alex Morgan, Horan wearing the armband in this match, as both of those players got the start. Look, I was eager to see what was going to come out from this locker room in the second half, not just the possibility of substitutions, which we didn't see right away. We did see Trinity Rodman come in for Alex Morgan, but mostly that next window, that hour-ish mark, is where we started to see more influx of player rotation in this match. And I respect it. I look, they wanted to give that initial 11 or 10 more or less players to try to give them the opportunity to finally unlock some things. Didn't happen around, maybe the 55-minute mark. I think I got a little nervous as we're starting to see some frustrations boil over a little bit. We saw, Lindsey Horan giving an earful to the official, saying, hey, we're taking some pretty physical bumps here along the way. We saw her have some words with a Wales player over a free kick. And I was like, oh no, let's not get into that headspace. But you know what? The captain turns out was correct. Maybe there needed to be a little bit of reaction, perhaps, to sort of get things going. Because shortly after that, we do see some more subs come in. We see Sophia Huerta get into this game. We see Lynn Williams get into this game. We get to see, finally, the senior national team debut of Savannah DeMello. And I was so excited for that. My initial reaction was in the halftime was, I would like to see Williams and DeMello get into this game. They're obviously having some troubles unlocking some things against Wales here. It's apparent that Rose Lavelle is not going to get minutes in this game. Who do you bring in off the bench to try to bring that dog into the game, to sort of say, all right, let's go and shake things up? And I think DeMello is a very good kind of prototypical player in that sense. They were also struggling on those set pieces, Lisa. And we know that in NWSL, DeMello is an absolute shark.
I know.
Set piece and we saw her get a chance on a corner. We finally see some good delivery from the corner flag.
That was the best chance they had from DeMello on the corner.
Sullivan making a good run. You almost thought it was going to be there. They had to have a goal line clearance by the Wales defender.
I mean, massive clearance. Like, that was fantastic on the defensive play by the Welsh side. But finally, you're exactly right. DeMello is whipping balls in with enough pace at the right level and picking out targets. It finds the head of Andy Sullivan, and then it is a goal line clearance. But the substitutes, I mean, that did come in. I mean, very typical to see maybe one at halftime and then around the 60-minute mark, and that's Rodman at half. And then Huerta, Williams, and DeMello coming in. I wanted to see DeMello, right? You don't want to get your first cap when you're already in the World Cup. Like, this was good. Shake it out. I think there was definitely some moments where you could tell she was thinking a little bit. When you get into a camp and you're getting new instructions from a new team, you have a lot of roles that you have to play and a lot of directions that you have to follow, and understanding not only your role, your spacing on the field, how the team is looking to play, but the 10 other players around you. Frankly, like, you need to know their role. That way, when they do something, whether it's in line with what they're supposed to be doing or not, you can adjust and adapt and fill those holes. So wheels were turning for DeMello when she stepped on the pitch. And I think very quickly she was able to shake that off and say, you know what, I'm just playing this game. I'm playing the game of soccer, and I'm going to do good things with it. But Trinity Rodman, for me, obviously the super sub in how things happened. But it started, I think, well before the goals actually started coming in the final 15 minutes, because to start the second half, she was a bit all over the place, getting in, trying to get involved, trying to have a different role than Alex Morgan played, which was incredibly quiet. And so with that, we saw movement from the front three, Sophia Smith, Alyssa Thompson, and Trinity Rodman, be a bit more different once Rodman was in there. And then as soon as Lynn Williams stepped onto the pitch for Alyssa Thompson, it was incredibly different. I wonder how much conversation was given to Lynn Williams before she stepped on the pitch around the 64th minute about the spacing on the field and where it could be, because we saw Williams dropping back so deep in the midfield to pick up the ball, get onto it. And that's what ultimately spurred the goals that came for the United States as it continued to run throughout this game. Lynn Williams, she got this hockey assist in the first goal, but that's why her role was so deep in the midfield. She was able to pick it up, and she was dishing these 25, 35-yard passes on a dime to her teammates. And she did it a number of times, whipping it out wide, whether she was finding DeMello or Smith or Rodman. And ultimately, the goal that comes from it, with just under 15 minutes to go in the game, the 76th minute, is from Lynn Williams to Sophia Smith to Trinity Rodman into the goal.
I love to see it. I'm not trying to minimize it by any way, shape, or form. I've just had some time to come down from it. I was absolutely hyped when I saw this goal come to life. You love to see it. Yes, it took over 75 minutes to get to this point, but I'm with you in pointing out all of the buildup to that moment. I think if you're looking at it from minute 1 to minute 76, yeah, that's a long time. But how this goal comes to life is part of two players who came off of the bench at halftime alongside Sophia Smith. And I love the unselfishness of Sophia Smith in this moment to get this opening goal, because we've talked about that and referenced that a lot in the play of Trinity Rodman, that she is also at times a very selfless player and will look for the pass or look for the open player instead of being the one to go ahead and put it away. So to sort of have the very intelligent presence of mind and quick decision making to see Williams to make that alternate run alongside Smith, to be that open and extra
to
outlet,
stay on side, like
loved it.
It sounds so simple, but there was so much space for Rodman to just overrun on this play, and she didn't. She stayed well behind Smith, so it wasn't going to be offside. There was no opportunity for that. Yeah, I mean, it was really an overall group effort from the front line. And that's what you want. That's what you want in a send-off game. The fact that all three are contributing in goal scoring opportunities, the unselfishness, the runs in the box. It was fantastic. And for Trinity, when they said this, it was only her third goal of her career, the first of the year for Trinity Rodman. I heard the can crack open. I heard it. As soon as that goal went in, it was like, she's ready. The can's been open. Rodman's ready to unleash. If you had any doubts before this game, before the 76th minute when it happened, I hope everyone took a sigh of relief, because once the jar opens for Rodman and she gets that first goal, they're going to continue to come. And hey, we saw that just about 12 minutes later in this game.
I love how it comes after kind of a frustrating moment, honestly. That's the other part of this that I really love, because something that we've heard, or seen with Rodman as we've, watched NWSL and watched her play with the United States women's national team. You even hear opposition and defenders, that Rodman is a young player, a player that maybe you could get under her skin or frustrate a bit, out on the wing.
She's got a short temper and she'll get a couple yellow cards.
All of that kind of jargon, right, that we've heard about Rodman. And it's like to know that just minutes before this goal happens, there's some contact just outside of the box, right? Her teammates, she herself looking at the official saying, hey, like, what's going on here? Where's the card? Where's the foul? None of that. She's not given that. But you know what? She doesn't stay in that. Focused. That's why I loved this opening goal. I don't care that it comes at the 75th minute. The fact that it is created and brought to life by Williams and Smith and Rodman, and that it was such a cool, calm, and collected finish by Rodman. Chef's kiss, absolutely. And it ultimately is the game winner. They don't need a brace from Rodman. No. But she provides it anyway. They
need a brace from her, because at this point, Welsh, Wales is still in it, right? Their confidence is still in it. Mentally, they're still in it after that first goal, because they just held the number one team in the world to 0 goals until the 76th minute, and they still have a chance and an opportunity. So the second goal coming in the 88th minute is one that just seals the deal. It puts the tape on the box for it. Second goal from Rodman. And as you said, it does come after a frustrating slew of moments. But my favorite part of watching these goals, and one of the things that's really crucial for me as an analyst, is to see how it develops, how they continue to go back, and what really sets the tone for the play. And sometimes it's a couple minutes before, right? Whoever makes the really hard tackle in the back, whoever gets into it. DeMello started this play because United States had a wave of pressure onto the goal, and Wales was clearing the ball out, and their defenders had a little bit of time to send the ball up, which just would have reset things for the United States. They would have still collected. It wasn't a big transition moment for Wales. And out of nowhere, Savannah DeMello comes streaking into the screen, and she makes a tough tackle. She doesn't get all the ball in this tackle, but it's enough to deflect it. And that deflection then bounces around. And that's where we see Trinity authoritatively jump on top of it after she had a look on goal just a few moments before, and it didn't work out. And she curls it. She looks at the goal and understands where the spatial awareness is and fixes her mistake that she made just minutes before in striking it too hard, going for the power. Instead, she finds finesse behind the ball outside the top of the 18 and curls it in. But it starts with DeMello's defensive work initially in the box to prevent an easy clearance from Wales.
We get the stamp on it. We get Rodman delivering it. It's the win. It's the full 2-0 win for this team before they have to head off to a World Cup. So where do they go from here? What comes next? Well, we know that they're literally about to get on a plane tonight and head off to New Zealand to begin their World Cup stage. And they're going to go up against Vietnam to kick things off. They're going to face off against Netherlands. They're going to face off against Portugal. They're going to play the entirety of their World Cup group stage in New Zealand. So we know that is the immediate thing that comes next. But in terms of what comes out of this particular game, is there something else that you want to see from the coaching staff, the players, like going into this World Cup match day one?
I mean, in terms of between now and then, I don't think I'm going to see too much. It comes down to media availability and interviews and those conversations. But internally within this team, I want them to continue to talk about their roles on this team and continue to understand what the team needs from them. I think there's a moment where Vlatko Andonovski talked about Lynn Williams and saying that she is the best 15-minute player in the world. And she will come on and even in as little as 15 minutes, as soon as she steps on the field, she will make a difference in the game. And perhaps that's her role moving forward, a 15-minute player. That's when we saw her come on in this game. She didn't sub on until the 65th minute. I think she would like to be a little bit longer of an impact player, but I think it's more of the idea that there is a lot of transparency between the coaching staff and the players. And of course, it's this mentality of next player up always, and you're always going to fill in and step for the team. But as a player, if you understand your role and understand what the team needs from you, and you can kind of, I don't want to say accept that, but come to terms with that and understand really what it means fully from all sides of it, you can head into a World Cup with that much more confidence. And that way, when you are called upon to do a different role, you're ready for it. But you also know that, hey, if that opportunity never comes, this is what you're here to do. And I think we saw different roles throughout this game, right? If Lynn Williams is that game changer that comes in off the bench and can spark a difference, and maybe that's the way that the coaching staff sees her, in a way that she can learn, right? Hey, Lynn, sit right next to me and we're going to talk about this game for the first 45 minutes and you're going to see where the spaces are. And then you go in and that's where you capitalize on the game. Also with Megan Rapinoe and what her role is, with Lindsay Horan as the captain, with Germa and Cook in the back line, their roles on this team. That's what I want to see from this group, because there are so many new players, young players getting those caps. If they can at least be in control of what the team wants from them, I think it's going to be a much more positive experience moving forward for this side.
All right. I like that. I think that's a good note to take a break. We're going to chat a little bit more about this game, close it out, maybe about some things that we didn't see or who we didn't see. We'll be back after a quick break.
Said I'm fired up. I'm sorry your time's up. I see the time came from the ashes, I rise up.
All right, if you're just joining us after a break on our live reaction here for the United States Women's National Team recap, a 2-0 win against Wales. They now head off to New Zealand to begin their camp in the march towards the group stage, which kicks off for them on July 21st against Vietnam. What comes out of this game? What we didn't see, who we didn't see, and a chance for us to react to this news as well. We actually didn't see Megan Rapinoe in this game. We were curious if whether or not we would, just because she is a Redding, California native, a Northern California native, and she recently announced that this is going to be her final World Cup tournament. She will be hanging up the cleats at the conclusion of her NWSL season with OL Reign. And it came literally, the announcement, just the day before the team took the pitch against Wales. And I think something important to note out of the announcement, out of the press conference, was the fact that, yeah, Rapinoe wanted to just sort of have the headline out there before the team even went to the World Cup. The 38-year-old forward said, yeah, we'll think about that. Those questions will follow her. Could you imagine if she tried to come back for another World Cup cycle and what the story would be there? Would rather just sort of have the decision and the headline out there already. But we didn't see her actually play in this game before they left. So
yeah, I think as I was saying right before we took the break, role players. And for Megan Rapinoe, her role on this team this summer is going to be even less than it was perhaps at the Olympics, and just less in terms of minutes on the field. It's still a giant role that she has to do and play for this team, but she is going to be a player that does so much more off the pitch for them than she does on the pitch. I know someone in our comments said, I apologize, I can't find it right now and throw it up, but she's going to come on and score the PKs at the end. Yeah. You bet she might in a game where it's coming down to penalty kicks at the end of it. Yeah, I see her stepping on in the final 5 minutes just to knock down a penalty kick. Why not? But that's kind of the role that you expect to see from this kind of player who has already won 2 World Cups. She's won an Olympic gold medal. She's a Ballon d'Or winner. She's done so many different things at the World Cup, golden boot, golden ball. She's won everything. And she alluded to this. She is very lucky to be able to go out and choose to go out of a career and choose when and be able to announce it and go to another World Cup, right? Go to a 4th one and say, this is what I'm going to do. And this is the role I'm going to play. I think it's a headspace that she's kind of been in for a little bit. And she alluded to this when she announced her retirement. It's a headspace for Megan Rapinoe that she knows she's done and she's at the end of the road. And she is now sharing that with everyone. That way, she's not the only one dealing with it, right? It's a little bit of sense of like, okay, let me get this off my chest a little bit. I am done after this. I am ready to go. I'm going to give it my all until through the World Cup, until the end of the NWSL season. I bet she still wants to win an NWSL championship. I bet she does. The one thing that is not on her giant resume. She does not have a championship. She's got 3 shields in the NWSL, a couple World Cups, a couple medals, but no championship. So I'm really happy for her. I mean, the legend, a GOAT for Megan Rapinoe. She's done so much to the game on the field, off the field, and I know she'll continue to be an influence and a leader and a mentor for a lot of players that grow up, and honestly an icon for the world of women's soccer and what she's been able to do for the sport.
I mean, we already saw some of the reaction to that, right? From her teammates. I mean, Alex Morgan saying that her immediate reaction was that they had to just go out and win the whole damn thing now. Like they have to. There's just like
there's no choice.
There's no choice. You know, we saw the clip of Crystal Dunn getting very emotional in the mix zone about it. You know, shedding a few tears about Megan Rapinoe, the person, the player, the teammate, the friend, and how instrumental she's been for Dunn in her career to this point with the national team. So it's just, you know, it's one of those things that I'm grateful for it. I think even for us, just as folks who are going to cover this World Cup in a content and media capacity, to just kind of have that news already out there and just kind of have it be done and dusted. And now it's actually just part of one of the many storylines going into a World Cup instead of like the unanswered question or the unknown type of question, like answer around this question going into this World Cup. So, you know, I think, you know, you mentioned even the NWSL championship, right? The one that maybe that she hasn't won, because you go through all of the accolades for this player, whether they're individual for team, you know, at this point, 2 World Cups, Olympic medals, right? Multiple NWSL shields with the Reign, a Ballon d'Or winner, a FIFA Best winner. Like you just go down, like you can
4 times She Believes, 3-time CONCACAF championship. Like there's just
like
so
you could
much.
just go down through everything, individual, team, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like you also can look out and create like this other third list in terms of everything that she's accomplished off of the pitch, you know, and outside of the locker room as well. That this player has for a very long time been that kind of vocal component, that face for the team when it comes to off-field issues or you know, issues that are very important to her. You know, she was the first player to publicly come out and kind of be a face for LGBTQ plus causes in this nation, and for future players on the team to maybe kind of feel comfortable within themselves and their role and their place on the team. She was the first ever white female athlete to take a knee in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick and his protest. And depending on who you ask, there's going to be a lot of different reaction to that. And she absolutely changed up things for the course of U.S. soccer. They made up like a Megan Rapinoe rule in light of her protest. And then they actually rescinded it and issued an apology around it as well in 2020. So these are just a number of things that we're not even touching on the fact that she has obviously been a vocal component as part of the equal pay lawsuit litigation, the open litigation that they went through in 2019 against U.S. Soccer, and now to sort of kind of put things together in a nice little bow, and like there's a historic collective bargaining agreement between the U.S. women's national team and the men's team. There's just all of these things. So it's like when you're looking at all of, like, we're going through these different titles and medals and individual and team awards. Like you also have like this list of things that she has had an impact on off of the pitch. So it's just one of these moments where, this is a player that is so prolific and so iconic to the point where she's just not going to be forgotten about, even though she's not playing even though she won't be playing with the team in another World Cup. So the news broke and we wanted to give ourselves the opportunity to try to react to this and react to the fact that no, we did not see her in the send-off game in her Northern California region, right, where she's from. So who knows? Maybe that means there's still a little bit of Rapinoe magic left to be seen and reserved for the upcoming World Cup. We'll have to keep an eye on that for sure. Something else that we're keeping an eye on, NWSL. I don't know if you guys knew this, but not only were there games this weekend, but there's actually games happening at this moment. So thanks for joining us, because you could be watching some NWSL action right now. We've got a couple scores that we need to go through for everyone and hit you with a quick recap of this before we exit. Orlando picking up a win over OL Reign, 1-0, a goal from Messiah Bright. We've got Racing Louisville 2-1 over Kansas City Current. We've got Houston Dash, unfortunately, dropping a loss to Houston because Chicago Red Stars will not be stopped during the World Cup period. A 1-0 win for Chicago Red Stars. San Diego and Washington Spirit played out to a 2-2 draw. And Gotham and Portland gave us a stunner, apparently. 2-1 for favor of Gotham. Go Bats. And Angel City and North Carolina Courage will kick off in about half an hour. If you're joining us live on YouTube, you can catch it on Paramount Plus. Make sure you tune into it because the soccer never sleeps, of course. But love to see it. There will be a break now from the regular season in NWSL. That will take place from now, the beginning of the 10th, all the way through August 4th, I believe. And then there will be some Challenge Cup matches that take place over the course of this World Cup period. So you could still tune in and catch some competition games there. But love to see it. Love to see NWSL also go out with a bang as well as the United States.
For sure. We didn't do too great on all of our picks.
Yeah.
But it's all right. It happens.
Look, there's a lot of players missing. We even at one point in our preview said, look, this might be a weekend where there's a ton of draws. And it turns out we only got one, but some narrow score lines too in there as well. We gotta show some love to these kind of bottom half, like, lower half table teams, because they're taking advantage of the fact that some of these other clubs don't have a lot of their superstars at the moment. And with these 2 weeks that we just had, as players were gone for international duty, some of these teams have stepped up in other ways. So, Orlando Pride being one of those teams, obviously Chicago Red Stars, Current falling just short this time, but have a win in the week prior. Racing Louisville, though, also another win for them going into this break. So it's going to be a fun stretch of games when everybody returns and the regular season returns in August.
Yeah, it should be really entertaining. I think we're already starting to see it, the opportunity of some of these other players, national team replacement players, or players that have been on teams and rosters but are now trying to get more and more consistent minutes, whether that's a start, playing 90, whatever it may be. It's the opportunity for these players, and anything can go. It makes the games so entertaining. They have been up until this point. We get one more tonight to kind of close out the weekend in the NWSL as Angel City against North Carolina. Watch it on Paramount Plus, but it's a good time. Good time for football.
Soccer never sleeps. And sometimes that's true for us as well here on Attacking Third. But that's going to be a wrap for us today. We want to try to get in this Angel City and North Carolina Courage game. So we're going to let you all get to it as well. Thank you all for listening to Attacking Third. Download, follow, and listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. You You can watch us, so make sure you subscribe at youtube.com/attacking3rd and get alerts for whenever we go live. And we are going to be back with even more content for you this week, so stay tuned. For Sandra, Herrera, and Lisa Carlin, this was Attacking Third.